At last the words of the chant floated up to them across the bowl of blackened wood and ashes. "Kill the pig! Cut her throat! Spill her blood!" Yet as the words became audible, the procession reached the steepest part of the mountain, and in a minute or two the chant had died away. Piggy sniveled, and Simon shushed him quickly, as though he had spoken too loudly in church. Jack, his face smeared with clays, reached the top first, and hailed Ralph excitedly with lifted spear. "Look! We've killed a pig! We stole upon them! We got in a circle!" Voices broke in from the hunters. "We got in a circle! We crept up! The pig squealed!" The twins stood with the pig swinging between them, dropping black gouts on the rock. They seemed to share one wide, ecstatic grin. Jack had too many things to tell Ralph at once. Instead, he danced a step or two, then remembered his dignity and stood still, grinning. He noticed blood on his hands and grimaced distastefully, looked for something on which to clean them, then wiped them on his shorts and laughed. Ralph spoke. "You let the fire go out." Jack checked, vaguely irritated by this irrelevance, but too happy to let it worry him. "We can light the fire again. You should have been with us, Ralph. We had a smashing time. The twins got knocked over. We hit the pig. I fell on top." "I cut the pig's throat," said Jack proudly, and yet twitched as he said it. "Can I borrow yours, Ralph, to make a nick in the hilt?" The boys chattered and danced. The twins continued to grin. "There were lashings of blood," said Jack, laughing and shuddering. "You should have seen it." "We'll go hunting every day." Ralph spoke again hoarsely. He had not moved. "You let the fire go out." This repetition made Jack uneasy. He looked at the twins and then back at Ralph. "We had to have them in the hunt," he said, "or there wouldn't have been enough for a ring." He flushed, conscious of a fault. "The fire's only been out an hour or two. We can light it up again." He noticed Ralph's scarred nakedness and the somber silence of all four of them. He saw it charitable in his happiness to include them in the thing that had happened. His mind was crowded with memories of the knowledge that had come to them when they had closed in on the struggling pig, knowledge that they had outwitted a living thing, imposed their will upon it, taken away its life like a long, satisfying drink. A satisfying drink, he says. That means Jack is enjoying this. Jack is definitely savage at this point. He enjoyed killing the pig. He spread his arms wide. "You should have seen the blood!" The hunters were more silent now, but at this they buzzed again. Ralph flung back his hair. One arm pointed at the empty horizon. His voice was loud and savage and struck them into silence. "There was a ship!" Jack faced at once with too many awful implications, ducked away from them. He laid a hand on the pig and drew his knife. Ralph brought his arm down first, fist clenched, and his voice shook. "There was a ship out there. You said you'd keep the fire going and you let it out." He took a step toward Jack, who turned and faced him. "They might have seen us. We might have gone home." This was too bitter for Piggy, who forgot his timidity in the agony of his loss. He began to cry out shrilly. "You and your blood, Jack Merridew! You and your hunting! We might have gone home!" Ralph pushed Piggy to one side. "I was chief, and you were going to do what I said. You talk, but you can't even build huts. Then you go off hunting and let out the fire." He turned away, silent for a moment. Then his voice came again, on the peak of feeling. "There was a ship!" One of the smaller hunters began to wail. The dismal truth was filtering through everybody. Jack went very red as he hacked and pulled at the pig. "The job was too much. We needed everyone." Ralph turned. "You could have had everyone when the shelters were finished, but you had to hunt. We needed meat." Jack stood up as he said this, the bloodied knife in his hand. The two boys faced each other. There was the brilliant world of hunting, tactics, fierce exhilaration, skill. And there was the world of longing and baffled common sense. Jack transferred the knife to his left hand and smudged blood over his forehead as he pushed down the plastered hair. Piggy began again. "You didn't ought to have let that fire out. You said you'd keep the smoke going." This from Piggy and the wails of agreement from some of the hunters drove Jack to violence. The bolting look came into his blue eyes. He took a step, and able at last to hit someone, stuck a fist into Piggy's stomach. Piggy sat down with a grunt. Jack stood over him, his voice vicious with humiliation. "You would you, fatty?" Ralph made a step forward and Jack smacked Piggy's head. Piggy's glasses flew off and tinkled on the rocks. Piggy cried out in terror, "My specs!" He went crouching and feeling over the rocks, but Simon, who got there first, found them for him. Passions beat about Simon on the mountain top with awful wings. "One side's broken." Piggy grabbed and put on the glasses. He looked malevolently at Jack. "I got to have them specs. Now I only got one eye. Just you wait." Jack made a move toward Piggy, who scrambled away till a great rock lay between them. He thrust his head over the top and glared at Jack through his one flashing glass. "Now I only got one eye. Just you wait." Jack mimicked the whine and scrambled. "Just you wait, yeah." Piggy and the parody were so funny that the hunters began to laugh. Jack felt encouraged. He went on scrambling, with and the laughter rose to a gale of hysteria. Unwillingly, Ralph felt his lips twitch. He was angry with himself for giving way. He muttered, "That was a dirty trick." Jack broke out of his gyration and stood facing Ralph. His words came in a shout. All right, all right." He looked at Piggy, at the hunters, at Ralph. "I'm sorry, about the fire, I mean. He drew himself up. "I apologize." The buzz from the hunters was one of admiration at this handsome behavior. Clearly they were of the opinion that Jack had done the decent thing, had put himself in the right by his generous apology, and Ralph obscurely in the wrong. They waited for an appropriately decent answer. Yet Ralph's throat refused to pass one. He resented, as an addition to Jack's misbehavior, this verbal trick. The fire was dead. The ship was gone. Could they not see? Anger instead of decency passed his throat. That was a dirty trick. They were silent on the mountaintop while the opaque look appeared in Jack's eyes and passed away. Ralph's final word was an ungracious mutter. "All right, light the fire." With some positive action before them, a little of the tension died. Ralph said no more, did nothing, stood looking down at the ashes round his feet. Jack was loud and active. He gave orders, sang, whistled, threw remarks at the silent Ralph, remarks that did not need an answer, and therefore could not invite a snub. And still Ralph was silent. No one, not even Jack, would ask him to move, and in the end they had to build the fire 3 yards away, and in a place not really as convenient. So Ralph asserted his chieftainship, and could not have chosen a better way if he had thought for days. Against his weapon, so indefinable and so effective, Jack was powerless, and raged without knowing why. By the time the pile was built, they were on different sides of a high barrier. And that's really kind of a metaphor for letting you know that this friendship that Jack and Ralph had is now pretty much over. They are on different sides of a high barrier. Jack being definitely savage, Ralph being civilized and wanting rescue. When they had dealt with the fire, another crisis arose. Jack had no means of lighting it. Then, to his surprise, Ralph went to Piggy and took the glasses from him. Not even Ralph knew how a link between him and Jack had been snapped and fastened elsewhere. "I'll bring 'em back. I'll come too." Piggy stood behind him, islanded in the sea of meaningless color, while Ralph knelt and focused the glossy spot. Instantly the fire was alight. Piggy held out his hands and grabbed the glasses back. Before these fantastically attractive flowers of violet and red and yellow, unkindness melted away. They became a circle of boys round a campfire, and even Piggy and Ralph were half drawn in. Soon some of the boys were rushing down the slope for more wood, while Jack hacked the pig. They tried holding the whole carcass on a stake over the fire, but the stake burnt more quickly than the pig roasted. In the end they skewered bits of meat on branches and held them in the flames, and even then almost as much boy was roasted as meat. Ralph's mouth watered. He meant to refuse meat, but his past diet of fish and nuts with an odd crab or, his past diet of fruit and nuts with an odd crab or fish gave him too little resistance. He accepted a piece of half-raw meat and gnawed it like a wolf. Piggy spoke, also dribbling. "Aren't I having none?" Jack had meant to leave him in doubt, as an assertion of power, but Piggy, by advertising his omission, made more cruelty necessary. "You didn't hunt?" "No more did Ralph," said Piggy wetly. "Nor Simon," he amplified. "There isn't more than a half portion of meat in the crab." Ralph stirred uneasily. Simon, sitting between the twins and Piggy, wiped his mouth and shoved his piece of meat over the rocks to Piggy, who grabbed it. The twins giggled, and Simon lowered his face in shame. See, Simon's an interesting character. He's kind of a middle guy, a middleman, a go-between. He's not really in conflict with Ralph or with Jack. He kind of gets along with everybody. Then Jack leapt to his feet, slashed off a great hunk of meat, and flung it down at Simon's feet. "Eat, damn you!" He glared at Simon. "Take it!" He spun on his heel, center of a bewildered circle of boys. "I got you meat!" Numberless and inexpressible frustrations combined to make his rage elemental and awe-inspiring. "I painted my face! I stole up! Now you eat, all of you, and I—" Slowly the silence on the mountaintop deepened until the click of the fire and the soft hiss of roaring meat could be heard clearly. Jack looked round for understanding, but found only respect. Ralph stood among the ashes of the signal fire, his hands full of meat, saying nothing. Then at last Maurice broke the silence. He changed the subject to the only one that could bring the majority of them together. "Where did you find the pig?" Roger pointed down the unfriendly side. "They were there, by the sea." Jack, recovering, could not bear to have his story told. He broke in quickly. "We spread round. I crept on hands and knees. The spears fell out because they hadn't barbs on. The pig ran away and made an awful noise. It turned back and ran into the circle, bleeding." All the boys were talking at once, relieved and excited. "We closed in." The first blow had paralyzed its hindquarters, so then the circle could close in and beat and beat. "I cut the pig's throat." The twins, still sharing their identical grin, jumped up and ran round each other. The rest joined in, making pig-dying noises and stabbing. "One for his knob! Give him a fourpenny one!" Then Maurice pretended to be the pig and ran squealing into the center, and the hunters, circling still, pretended to beat him. As they danced, they sang, "Kill the pig! Cut her throat! Bash her in!" Ralph watched them, envious and resentful. Not till they flagged and the chant died away did he speak. "I'm calling an assembly." One by one they halted and stood watching him. "With the conch, I'm calling a meeting, even if we have to go on in the dark. Down on the platform. When I blow it, now." He turned away and walked off down the mountain. So you can clearly see these boys becoming more and more savage as the novel progresses. Definitely with the murder of this pig, there is a shift in the mood of the story now. And Ralph is desperately trying to hold on to civilization in the old ways. So that's it for Chapter 4. Next time we're going to get into Chapter 5.